Throughout the 20th century and into the 21st, political discourse has been shaped by a false dichotomy. Fascism and communism are widely understood as diametric opposites, one allegedly rooted in the far right, the other in the far left. But this reading ignores the ideological continuity that they share. The internecine conflicts between fascist and communist states were not ideological opposition between left and right political views, but civil wars between competing collectivist doctrines. The modern left right political spectrum owes its origins to the seating arrangements of the French National Assembly, not any systemic taxonomy of political theory. Yet today, this antiquated framework is still invoked to distinguish fascism from socialism. Horseshoe theory tries to account for this by asserting that the ends of the linear political spectrum curve inwards and make the ends similar. The political spectrum is not linear. It's not a line, it's not a curve, and it's not even really a circle like some would say, that you go so far one end, you come back out on the other. If you were to try and picture it in a quantifiable manner, it would probably look more like a three-dimensional shape of some sort. Not quite a spheroid, but you get the idea. Something as complex as the myriad of political ideologies can't be simplified into left versus right binary solutions. But I digress, back to the fascists fighting communists. Or I guess you could better off say it as the socialists just eating each other. The division is not grounded in substance. Both fascism and communism aim to dismantle liberal individualism, decentralization, and market autonomy. Their disagreement lies not in whether the state should control the individual, but in how and why it should do so. That makes them adversarial factions of the same philosophical lineage, not polar opposites, but rival claimants to the same ideological throne. Both fascism and communism trace their origins to 19th century European collectivism. Marx, Engels, and later Lenin rejected the primacy of the individual, subordinating personal liberty to the imperatives of class and revolution. Mussolini, who began his political career as a Marxist, absorbed the same collectivist principles, transmuting class struggle into national struggle. What emerged in both systems was a model in which the individual had no intrinsic value apart from his role in the collective, whether defined by class or by nation. Property rights, civil liberties, and free expression were all subordinated to ideological conformity. In this structure, dissent becomes treason, not merely to a government, but to the moral order imposed by the regime. And we have a good historical case study for this fratricide. The Spanish Civil War from 1936 to 1939 offers a salient case. The conflict is often framed as a clash between fascism and democracy, but the leftist coalition that opposed Franco was itself deeply fractured. Anarchists, Trotskyists, Stalinists, and Republicans spent as much time fighting one another as they did the nationalists. The infamous purge of the POUM, the Partido Obrero de Unificación Marxista, by Soviet aligned forces, was not a battle between right and left, but a purge within the left itself. Similarly, the Molotov-Ribbentrop Pact of 1939, a non-aggression treaty between Nazi Germany and the Soviet Union, should have shattered the illusion of ideological opposition. Two regimes allegedly on opposite ends of the spectrum divided Eastern Europe and coordinated strategic operations. Their eventual falling out was geopolitical and ideological, not philosophical. The German invasion of the USSR in 1941 was not a war between fascism and socialism. It was a war between rival collectivist empires over who had the truest flavor of socialism. This infighting is a feature, not a bug. It is often argued that the mutual hostility between fascist and communist states prove their ideological distinctiveness. But this presumes that ideological movements must be aligned in order to share foundational principles. History provides ample evidence to the contrary. Religious schisms, for example, often provoke the most violent conflicts precisely because the disputing factions share foundational tenets. In the same way, fascists and communists were rivals for control over the same ideological terrain. Their wars were struggles over doctrinal supremacy, not over philosophical incompatibility. Indeed, both systems relied on secret police, propaganda, state terror, and ideological indoctrination. The labels may have been different, but the tools were the same. From the Gestapo to the NKVD, from the Hitler Youth to the Komsomol, the mechanisms of control were virtually interchangeable. So, what are the academic motivations for the distortion? The post war academic establishment, heavily influenced by Marxist and post Marxist thought, had strong incentives to sever fascism from its collectivist lineage. To do otherwise would implicate socialism, their favored model, in the war crimes of the fascist regimes. By isolating fascism as a far right phenomena, they create a political firewall around communism. This was not a neutral act of classification. It was and is an act of ideological sanitation. The goal was and still is to preserve the legitimacy of one authoritarian model by anathematizing the other. But this effort has obscured the reality. Fascism and communism are best understood as fraternal adversaries, not philosophical strangers. In contemporary politics, the same dynamics persist. Factions within collectivist ideologies frequently engage in purges, cancellations, and denunciations, not because they are fundamentally opposed, but because they are competing over who gets to define the collective will. When modern leftist movements marginalize dissenting voices within their own coalitions, or when nationalist movements fracture over strategic priorities, they are reenacting the same conflicts that plagued their 20th century predecessors. These disputes do not signal a return to balance or liberalism, they signal the intensification of internal struggles for control over the machinery of collectivism. Ideological kinship does not preclude conflict. In fact, it often guarantees it. Fascism and communism may wear different uniforms, wave different flags, and employ different slogans, but at their core, both subjugate the individual to an abstract collective, enforced by state violence and justified by ideological purity. Again, these wars were not wars of left versus right. These were wars between rival tyrannies. Understanding this is not merely an academic exercise, it is a prerequisite for recognizing how collectivist power sustains itself by constantly seeking new enemies, even within its own ranks. If you enjoy my content, please consider liking, sharing, and subscribing. If you'd like to support future content, please visit my Patreon, link in the description below. I've been Drex Hawkins. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good one, my friends.